right. And welcome to another episode here of Aftershocks on AftershocksPodcast.com. And our guest on today's podcast is a name that many of you will recognize from her time as a drummer for 90s metal heavyweights, Kittie. And she's here to talk about her latest outfit, Doom Sludge Rockers, the White Swan, whose new EP titled Nocturnal Transmission drops today, September 18th on War Crime Recordings. I'd like to welcome Mercedes Lander to the podcast. Mercedes, thanks for coming on. How you doing?
I am wonderful. How are you?
I'm doing awesome. Thanks. Well, first off, congrats on the release of Nocturnal Transmission, the band's fourth EP. And if there's a song on it that's getting a lot of attention right now, it's that Tracy Bonham cover, Tell It to the Sky. What a great job you guys did on putting a doom metal stamp on that song. I mean, that's not really a song or an artist you would think of, a metal band covering, especially a band like you guys. But so go ahead and tell us, out of all the covers you wanted to do, what made you go with that song?
So I have like a list in my Spotify filled with songs that I would like to cover. And that's like number one on the list.
Nice.
That song for me in particular, like I always just felt like it was such a superbly, wonderfully written song. And I really wanted to, I guess, maybe put the White Swan spin on it.
Okay, cool.
And I figured that it would translate very well, and it would sound like a White Swan song, given the right judge. So so it ended up working out very well.
It sure did. Like I said, it's really, I think it's fantastic what you guys do with that. It's fantastic. And there's also a familiar name that you brought into the fold on this record, Siegfried Meyer. Right. He, of course, worked with you in the past with Kittie. So what is it about him that made you want to work with him again on the new record?
So I absolutely love working with Siegfried. And Sig and I have known each other for 20 years.
Wow. Okay.
So and we've worked together quite a bit. So it's kind of just like, oh, hey Sig, I'm coming over.
Oh, it's easy then.
Right. And like he understands like what I mean when I say things, if that makes sense.
Sure.
And really that's kind of where I'm at. And I get where he is coming from as well. And
Okay.
Beautiful space called Beach Road Studios, just a little bit northwest, I guess, here in a town called Goderich.
Okay.
A beautiful studio, and I've recorded a lot of records there, and usually just playing drums. But this one I'm playing some different instruments along with drums. So yeah, it was just it was nice to have Siegfried back in the fold, and he's a wonderful person to work with and super easy. And if I tell him I'm like I wanna do this, he's always gung ho for it. So
very cool. Very cool. Well, you just brought up something about you, being behind the drum kit for so many years, for most of your career, obviously. And now, I mean, you obviously must have been itching to show that other side of yourself artistically, right? I mean, that you were unable to do with Kittie. How liberating is it now to be able to create, music and express yourself in ways that you probably couldn't do so as much, previously?
Well, I always did write a lot in Kittie. But again, when we would play that's my primary instrument, drums. So I always did write other things in that band, but it's nice to be able to actually, it's awkward too though, man. Cause like I am so used to just like, I spent, 20 something years behind a drum kit, and then I just kind of creep my way up, and now it's a little different, and it was definitely took me a little bit to get used to it, being different and having to like talk and stuff like that, talk to people, and a live audience, being up front, a little different.
Sure.
But it teaches you really quickly how to be commanding and to command that audience. And it's been a wonderful experience. I've really enjoyed myself.
Awesome. Yeah. Awesome. That's great. Well, the vibe of Nocturnal Transmissions, it's sort of a bit of a confusion because on the one hand, it's very traditionally doom metal. Then the other, there's very uplifting messages of positive, relationships. I mean, usually Doom, they're always talking about doom and gloom and very, downer type of stuff. But this is really uplifting, which is very different. It's very, obviously it's very, outside the boundaries of what most, the doom metal bands do lyrically. So when you write, I mean, how do you balance sort of the two sides of your mind and sort of, coalesce that into one singular, creative output?
It's interesting to me because, like, I always kind of want the music to be the complete antithesis of what the lyrics are. And I mean, it's not all like with this particular record. It's a very, very positive, lovey-dovey kind of record. But all of our stuff has been like that. But most of it has been because that's just who I am as a person. I'm mushy. And it's one of those things, right? Like, so I guess, for me as well, I really enjoy writing catchy songs, and I really enjoy putting the work in to make things pop in certain ways and stuff like that. So that stuff is very important to me as well. But yeah, like the goal always to kind of like, trick everyone and make everybody think that this is going to be a sad record at first listen. But then when you actually are like, oh, I'm going to listen to these lyrics, or I'm going to read these lyrics, it's like, oh, very surprising. So yeah, I like tricking people.
Sure, well, you definitely did trick me, I tell you, for sure. Well, yeah, I was mentioned before. I mean, it's your 4th EP with the band. All of them since 2016. So pretty much you've been dropping like an EP, annually now over the last 4 or 5 years. And that's really becoming more of a conventional way of releasing music these days, right? Is to release EPs instead of full lengths. I mean, obviously there's many reasons to it. I mean, for one, your average music listener doesn't have the attention span to sit down and listen to a full record like we all used to. That's for sure. And then second, obviously, music is consumed at such a fast-paced level these days that people listen to a new record, a couple of times maybe, and then boom, they move on to the next thing. Yeah. So, I mean, now that you've done this 4 times by releasing smaller amounts of music in a shorter time span, do you notice that this model is definitely more efficient in terms of keeping your fan base continuously, connected and interested in the band, and thus it's more effective than, say, releasing a full length every 2 or 3 years?
Yeah. You know what? Yeah. I really, really, really like the structure that we decided on when we first put out our first EP. And, with the exception of 2019, which we did not release anything, we have released EPs consecutively, usually once a year at least. So we try our best to get music out at least once a year. And I find it just keeps everybody a little more engaged because there's so many things that music fans, there's just so many outlets now. Like you can just on your phone and listen to Spotify or Apple Music or whatever your streaming service is that you like, or maybe you use all of them, you know what I mean?
Sure.
But for me, I just feel like, if there's a continuous stream of music, it'll just keep people engaged.
Yeah, no, makes a lot of sense. That's for sure. Playing with the White Swan, now you're not surrounded sort of in a different circuit of bands and musicians, being in that stoner doom sludgy scene, compared to then what you were with Kittie. I mean, not really playing, the shows with all the big global names as much that you had been doing, obviously, from, since the beginning of your musical career. So after having such an enormous amount of success at such a young age, is it sort of kind of cool and refreshing to kind of now experience what, like 99.9% of metal bands go through, meaning, they have to play the smaller shows, smaller venues, and sort of work your way up gradually. Is that different? I mean, obviously, is it more, I guess, refreshing compared to how you skyrocketed into fame, pretty much overnight with Kittie?
Well, I mean, with Kittie, we had a good 3 years of playing shitty clubs before. Okay. Well, 2 years of playing shitty clubs before things get serious. But as long as I've been a musician, I've done other things as well, right? So other than Kittie. So I've been playing clubs. I mean, I think the first side project that really played a lot of shows that I had was a band called Night of the Demons, like back in 2004 or 2005.
Okay.
We were doing like DIY weird VFW halls and small and stuff like that. and I sang in that band. No instruments, which is really cool. But then after that, I was in a power pop band for about 3 or 4 years, called the Alcoholics, and then I started the White Swan afterwards. So I've continuously played small clubs, and you know what? To be honest with you, if the show's good, the show's good. It doesn't matter what it is, right?
Sure.
And just as long as people are enjoying themselves, I think that's the most important thing. And to have people, rock out, enjoy themselves, and like, if you're up there and you can see that you're making a connection with somebody, I think that's the most important thing. But I love playing shows. Doesn't matter what size, just as long as it happens, which I haven't been doing a whole lot of lately.
Sure, I know. Unfortunately, I know. Well, I mean, yeah. Do you enjoy that? Because it's so much more intimate when you're obviously at a smaller venue than at a bigger one. And so, is that something, especially now being a front woman too, with the band with your own vision, and that's essentially your band. I mean, how is that? Is that a lot? Is that more, I guess, fulfilling? I should say.
I think it's all pretty. For me, it's great. I love the fact that I get to express myself and I get to make that connection with the audience. And it's nice that I have my own thing too, right? Like,
sure.
That's super cool. And it's nice that I have people like you who want to talk to me about it, which is the most important thing. Because I would be really worried if on release day I didn't get to talk to anybody. Nobody to talk to me.
Sure.
That's right? It's, what, this has been such a great experience to be in this band. And I've really, really enjoyed myself a lot.
Awesome.
Yeah,
that's great. I think one of the best things too about, the sort of the doom sludge, scene. I mean, I keep having to use the word scene, but I mean, just that circuit, is there's not as much, if really at all, any emphasis put on the gender of its band members. I mean, it's just something I've noticed, right?
Yeah. So like a lot of a couple other bands, like in this same kind of general genre, where I just think that people don't care as much about that, and I'm all for that, because like I would just, if I had it my way, like none of that stuff would matter, and people would just listen to the music and enjoy that.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, well, so say, do you find that things today are better in regards to that? I mean, you still see the female fronted thing thrown around, which is just silly because it's, you're basing, a sound of a band, a genre, off of the person's gender or sex. I mean, I always thought it was so silly. You know what I mean? And it's like, but I mean, obviously things have, I think, gotten better over the years, because you just see a lot more women in metal, which is great to see. Yeah. But there still is that divisive female fronted title. I mean, do you, from your experiences, do you see that that's sort of something that's maybe slowly but surely kind of going to the wayside more so than it used to be?
Well, it's definitely a lot more common now than it was when I first started playing music. That's for sure. That didn't really exist beyond like regionally successful bands, really. Like I can maybe think of like 2 or 3 bands on, I could probably count them on one hand, where it was like, a metal band that had a female. One of my cats is screaming. But yeah, like I maybe count on one hand, but like now it's more accepted. People are starting to kind of realize that like, who cares? The music's music. But yeah, when I first started, 24 years ago, I think we're a lot different then.
Sure.
And especially being so young, that was definitely another really weird thing, because when you're 12 and you start a band with your friends, you're not thinking about that, right?
It's true.
You're just starting out with your instrument and you're wanting to play music with your friends.
True.
And that is kind of that's kind of where that started. But it's I find with this genre, I find it's a little more accepting.
Yeah. I just, from my experiences, I feel the same way exactly about that genre. And speaking of, of your old band Kittie there. I mean, last year marked the 20th anniversary of the debut Spit, and this year marks the 20th anniversary of your guys' appearance at the 2000 Ozfest tour. I mean, what an experience that must have been. I mean, especially, that doesn't happen for a lot of teenagers, that's for sure. I don't know how you ladies were able to process all that at such a young age, especially in an environment that's so intense and abrasive as metal. I mean, I'm sure everyone was really cool, but still pretty overwhelming and very, I wouldn't say intimidating, but just sort of overwhelming, I guess, being in the metal scene at that age. But I mean, no matter how great of an opportunity experience all that was, it also had to be so hard in terms of touring at such an intense pace at such a young age. I mean, a lot of pressure on you guys, I'm sure, at that time. How were you guys really able, to process all that and deal with that type of pressure at such a young age? As much as a great experience as it was, it had its challenges and obviously you guys must have learned so much just from that first year.
Yeah, and I think that's why some of the people that were in the band ended up not making it the duration of the band, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was not easy. You're at that age, 15. When I first started touring, I was 15. So, 15, 16, 17, 18 years old. You're at that pivotal stage in your life where, you need to be making friends and hanging with your friends. And, and we just kind of had adult friends. We didn't have, at a certain point, when you're on the road, there was nobody else that was our age. So it was like me being 16, hanging out with a bunch of 30-year-olds, you know what I mean? And so on one end of the spectrum, it's like you grow up really fast and you have to be an adult very quickly because there's adult decisions that need to be made because this band just became a business. And there's a lot of pressure, outside pressure, and from, like record labels and stuff like that you don't think about when you're 16 or 15. You're just getting into this, but then when it actually happens, it's crazy. There's so much pressure, so much outside pressure. And especially in the situation that we were in with our old label, there was definitely some very interesting things going on with that. So, but at the same time, you still are a little kid.
Sure.
You're not even an adult, but you have to make all of these adult decisions. So yeah, it was interesting. I definitely have had the weirdest life out of anybody that I know. Like, I don't know anybody else that has had the weird experiences that I have had, especially at such a young age. Like maybe when they're older and a little better equipped to be able to handle it. But so in a lot of respects, I didn't have a childhood, but in a lot of respects, I had an extended childhood. And that would be the best way to explain it.
Okay. That's a great childhood in a lot of ways. I mean, like you said, very unconventional, but unique and, something that only very few people have experienced before. So that's really cool.
For sure.
Yeah. Just real quick before I ask my next question, I want to preface it by giving my, deepest condolences to you and the band, on the passing of your previous Kittie bandmate Trish back in 2017. And I know both you and Morgan have been apprehensive about, continuing on with Kittie without her. And, you both have, obviously, you're now doing your own thing musically, you're on your own paths. So I know you're both busy and focused on your current outfits. So, I mean, is there any potential news or anything that you could share with us within the Kittie camp, or is the band still just on hiatus until, further notice, pretty much?
So with that, we were, I don't know, because we kind of feel like we can just pick it up whenever we feel like the time is right. And I think that's the thing that will probably end up happening if it ever does. But right now, the documentary, Origins Evolutions is on Amazon Prime TV. And which has kind of done some crazy stuff to our social media, and people are posting like crazy about us again. So I don't really know.
Okay.
You know, at this point, it's kind of up to everybody else. Like, I just like playing music, and I always just like to play music. But I do agree that, like, you know, it would be hard to, because of what happened with Trish. It's definitely has not been the easiest for us to even really talk about doing something like that. For a while after we did the screening, and then we did that show in London in, I think it was 2017. 2017, when we did that, or maybe it was 2018. It was definitely 2017. Anyway, whatever, it was October. After we were talking about maybe, you know, putting something together with multiple lineups. But again, like, I mean, it's just hard because, you know, that's a lot of people logistically. And so, I mean, I guess we'll just see what happens. And I guess there's no touring right now anyway. So if we were to do anything, I think it would, we'd really have to think about the logistics of it. And we'd want to make sure that, you know, everybody was involved in some facet that wanted to be involved, if that makes sense.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yes, definitely. Well, speaking of, like you just mentioned, you know, obviously, yes, you can't go out and tour. You can't play shows right now. You got a brand new record that drops today. I mean, other than doing podcasts like these and interviews, how does a band like you guys, you know, like the White Swan, promote a new album during this crazy time?
Well, so I talk about that a lot.
Sure.
That's why this record was recorded in December of 2019, but that's why it's coming out now. I sat on it for a little bit, and because I wasn't sure. By the time I got the record back, it was, you know, the beginning of February, and then by March, you know, this shit hit the fan, and everything life kind of stopped for a little while there, and it's still not 100% back to normal, and I don't think it will be for a long time, unfortunately. But you just have to create content. I'm really lucky that I, you know, have Steve from War Crime that has like been a huge champion of White Swan since day one, and he you know, put out the vinyl. He did an amazing job with it, and so we have some physical product, and we also have, you know, the digital product as well, and then we just make content. We released a video for In Love and Ritual last month, I think it was, and then we've got a surprise coming up here shortly in maybe a week or two. So
cool.
For some more stuff for everybody, visual content, because that's what everybody wants now, what the kids want.
They sure do.
So we've got some more stuff in the works, and we'll just continue to kind of go along with this and see what happens. And if we get to play shows in the meantime, I think that would be great. But if it doesn't happen, you know, I'm okay with that.
Yeah. What, I mean, have you guys, I'm sure you're probably writing a lot of music right now, right? Because you said the record was done in December last year.
Yeah.
So you probably have another whole EP, at least one written by now, huh? Close to it.
I'm pretty close. Like, I feel like I've compiled like probably like, you know, like ideas for about 6, and I'll probably like chop it down. So, you know, with any luck, maybe the beginning of next year.
Okay. Well, fantastic. Well, Mercedes, why don't you just go ahead and tell the listeners where they could find music and merch from the White Swan, and you know, where they can just check out your videos and everything.
Well, you can check us out on YouTube. You can just, like, you know, search the White Swan. We do have a YouTube channel. So, and I think that's youtube.com/the White Swan Band, but I'm not 100% sure, because I should probably look that up. But more importantly, you can check us out on Bandcamp. So that would be thewhiteswan.bandcamp.com. and our vinyl is for sale there. And then our whole discography is also available digitally. And we have a deal right now, I think, where it's like 15% off if you buy the whole discography.
Cool.
And other than that, all of the streaming sites or platforms, rather, like Apple Music, you can just search the White Swan. We pop up. You can't miss us.
Oh, awesome. Well, yeah. Well, I mean, definitely I suggest it to everybody out there to go ahead and check out the new EP titled Nocturnal Transmission. It drops today, September 18th, on War Crime Records from the White Swan. Mercedes, thank you so much for coming on, and we appreciate it, and good luck with everything.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks so much, Mercedes.
Sure.
Take care. All right. Take care. Bye-bye. Thanks for listening to Aftershocks. For more episodes, go to our website at www.aftershockspodcast.com. Visit us on our Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter pages for more news and information on the podcast. And be sure to subscribe, listen to, and review all episodes on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and all other podcast platforms. For your music listening pleasure, visit our website or go to www.shockwavesradio.com. For all comments and questions, please email us at info@aftershockspodcast.com.